Hello, everyone. It's with great pleasure to open this important webinar on behalf of the Middle East Water Forum and the Center for Sustainable Solutions in Practical Hydrology. I would like to welcome all panelists and participants to this second important webinar. Today, we have about 364 participants from around the world, and for that, I would like to thank you all for your participation. This outstanding number of participants and the countries tells us about the importance of the webinar subject. I would also like to thank Dr. Alicia Olli and from UNESCO IHP and Dr. Alfonso Rivera, the chair of IAH. And to give you a perspective about the Middle East Water Forum, the Middle East Water Forum is a pioneer platform with regional perspectives on raising public awareness and enhancing the management of water challenges in the Middle East by adopting effectiveness and efficiency, integration, and sustainability through exchange of data, expertise, and innovative technologies without the need to cross political borders. Our mission is mainly to advance knowledge and actions toward achieving water security for all. Okay, so I would leave the floor to Dr. Alice.
Okay, thank you, Hassan. Thank you very much.
A short also introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much. Unfortunately, these technical issues are not yet perfect as we would like. Let me introduce myself. I'm Alicia Aureli. I'm a member of the Secretariat of the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program in UNESCO. And I'm delighted to be with you today and to say welcome to all on behalf of UNESCO in this second round of the negotiations over transboundary rivers and aquifer. But the UNESCO Intergovernmental Hydrological Program since more than 20 years supporting actions to improve the knowledge and the cooperation for the sustainable management and the good governance of transboundary waters. At the beginning of the year 2000, together with the International Association of Hydrogeologists and with Mr. Shani Puri here with us, Alfonso Rivera, Raya Stefan, and some of the experts who have honored working with UNESCO, we launched an initiative on the International Shared Aquifer Resource Management. In particular, to improve cooperation on transboundary aquifer that contain groundwater resources that are our more precious hidden resource. Cooperation and solid science for informing policy is of utmost importance to achieve sound governance of this system. This webinar, this learning tool is certainly contributing to a better understanding that cooperation is always possible and is giving us very interesting indications and sound example how negotiation can be taken. I'm definitely thanked to all of the organizers for inviting us, and we are delighted to continue to coordinate and work together. I definitely warmly welcome all the experts and the participants, and I will follow with a great pleasure the continuation of this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Dr. Alfonso?
Yes, Hassan, thank you so much indeed. Well, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, wherever you are located. So let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Alfonso Rivera, and I am the chairman of the International Association of Hydrogeologists Transboundary Aquifer Commission, and the former chief hydrogeologist of the Geological Survey of Canada, and associate professor of the University of Quebec, also in Canada. So unfortunately, I was not available at the time of the first round of these negotiations of transboundary river aquifer. So I am now, and I'm very thrilled to be here. So I very much appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much, Hashami, to speak on behalf of the Transboundary Aquifer Commission. I note that this base game simulation, though a game, it is quite relevant to what we at the Transboundary Aquifer Commissions are trying to promote. Actually, it is perfectly aligned with the work that we do at that commission. Further, this game-based simulation is very timely and relevant, as it can be considered, I considered it as a pre-ISARN 2021 conference, which I'm sure most of you know will take place in 5 weeks from now in Paris, at the organized by UNESCO and IAH, as Alicia already alluded to. Further, this simulation really is ingeniously designed to mimic the discussions and negotiations that might take place between countries wishing to collaborate with neighbors under a condition of potential conflict in using a shared river and a shared aquifer. So its intention is to facilitate progress in the collaboration with neighbors. So I will not take your time because I know we are waiting for the discussion. So again, thank you so much indeed. And let the second round begin. Good luck to you all.
Thank you so much and welcome everyone. So Shami, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to first of all, Middle East Water Forum, and secondly, the invited guests, Dr. Aureli from UNESCO and Dr. Rivera from the IAH Transboundary Commission. And of course, my welcome also to the four negotiators who have very kindly given up their very valuable time in the first round of negotiations and have also agreed to come into the second round of negotiations, which is, as you know, is a simulation of how negotiations take place. I'd also like to recognize and welcome the large number of colleagues and friends from around the world who've joined us. There's over 360, I think. And I think last time around we had over 70 countries participating. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you back. And I'm also very pleased to note that in between, there has been quite a lot of correspondence and discussions about what this whole thing is all about. And I will mention the four negotiators, but I will ask them to introduce themselves later on once we get into the game. So we have Dr. Otto's speakers, who's currently in China. We have Karen Wilholth, who I think at the moment is in South Africa. We have Raya Stefan, who is currently in Paris. And we have Rosario Sanchez, who is in Texas. So we span the whole world. And I'm sitting in England, and Hassan is in Cairo with our colleagues with technical support in Germany. So we really are transboundary in this sort of sense. The game that we're now going to simulate is the second round. So the purpose of this is to provide a learning tool to better understand the issues that arise when negotiations are carried out between negotiating countries. A lot of people want to know how these things actually take place. We're not saying that what our negotiations demonstrate is exactly how it happens, but it's pretty similar to it. So I hope you'll find this a very useful and a good learning process, which will help you to understand how these things occur, but also to help to promote the collaboration and cooperation between countries, certainly where you're working and where you're involved with supporting transboundary river and aquifers, and often they're confined. So we have two negotiating parties, two people each in the parties. One party represents the country of Hilistan, and you will see an illustration about that. And the other party represents the country of Valistan. And at the bottom of the screen, you can see where you can download this PowerPoint from. And if you haven't already downloaded the PowerPoint, please go ahead and download it so we can follow the negotiations and discussions either while we're running or later on if you wish. So on this occasion, we're going to have 2 rounds of negotiations, and we want to see how the negotiating parties will move forward in this round of negotiations. The first round of negotiations took place in September, and here's a summary of what they discussed at that time. So this will bring you up to date as to where we stand with the negotiation, the simulated negotiations. So in the simulated year 2005, so going several years back, the parties voluntarily came to the negotiating table, supported by a neutral facilitator, which is myself sitting over here. I call myself the moderator or the facilitator. And when they came to the negotiating table, they put forward their positions on the needs of what they actually wanted from this interconnected river-aquifer system in which the 2 sharing countries have their territory. And they stated their preferences of what they want to do in the way ahead. One party suggested that they would like to have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding on the way ahead. And the other party preferred to have a more formal treaty kind of agreement in order to proceed. Both parties also stated that there was a need for basic data and information about the aquifer, and that it needed to be updated before further steps could be taken. At the end of that first round, we didn't end up with any formal document. It wasn't signed or agreed, but the parties did agree that they would meet again. And here we are meeting the second time round. I'd just like to point out that the negotiating parties have been provided with a lot more background information, which helps them to understand the technical backgrounds, which may not be available to the whole of the audience, but it is available if anybody would like to have much more detail. I can provide that to you later on. Just for your interest, who was it that participated in the last round of negotiations in the audience? Well, we had a large number of academics and a large number of government staff. So that's very interesting, and also other people. So many people were academics, and a lot of people were from the government, which demonstrates that we are trying to promote this policy science interface through this activity that we're carrying on. And then who were these people? A large number were scientists and a large number were engineers. So that's again very good, because these are the kind of people who provide the background and provide the information for the people who would negotiate. We didn't have many lawyers, and perhaps we didn't try and attract them, or maybe they didn't want to complete the questionnaire because completing the questionnaire was not compulsory. And we had some socioeconomists, but I would have liked some more. And then there's a lot of people, well, 22 of them, who said that they belong to the other category. Interestingly, 44 of the 170 responses said that they had quite a lot of knowledge about this issue, about the transboundary aquifers, river waters. They understood the scientific, legal, and political and socioeconomics. There are quite a few people who are very knowledgeable in our audience, and I'm assuming that this audience is similar to the one we had last time. But a very large number said that they had limited experience and that they were wanting to learn. And then quite a few were new to the subject. So we welcome all of those as well. And interestingly, a very large number, 138, said that they would like to take part in a course if a course was being promoted. So good news is that with the Middle East Water Forum, we are proposing to develop a course, and hopefully once that course gets underway, we will invite you to participate and join in the training course. Let's move to the second round. Here we are in the second round today. This is the year 2010, simulated year 2010. And the question is, what has happened in the last 5 or 7 years since the last lot of negotiations took place? Well, in the case of Hilistan, the increasing water shortages have continued. Private wells have been drilled in the more wealthier districts of the capital city. The permit applications are lagging behind, purely because the ministry that deals with these issues lacks adequate staff and resources. And the suggestion that the farmers might reduce their abstractions in the farming area, which I will illustrate in a minute, and met with the serious threat of community rebellion, understandably, and the political representatives of that area promised in their parliament to resist any controls on pumping. And this is understandable because it's a bit difficult to reduce pumping when a lot of it's to do with food production. What's happening in Walistan? Well, in Walistan, the demand for increased cotton irrigation is continuing, and it means that some additional diversion from the river has already started. Some people have started drilling wells to do some possibly conjunctive use or maybe irrigate from new wells. There is a lot of private sector financing, and this private sector financing is posing some difficulties to the government because they're saying that the government and the ministry is not moving fast enough. And the ministry there is facing some criticisms for not taking action on providing water for increased irrigation. The other thing that has happened is that in this period, in between the first and second round of negotiations, some of the data has been updated, but through a university postgraduate study, which again used limited data, but it had 1 or 2 new boreholes, but it reprocessed all the information. And I will illustrate what the result of that updated study was. So just to bring you up to date, here we have the 2 countries. We have Hilistan and Walistan, and that's what the situation in the block diagram looks like. Hilistan is the area which receives the main amount of rainfall. Walistan has less rainfall and therefore less recharge, etc. The first question for the polling is up. You will have 10 minutes to respond to it, and we certainly look forward to your answers. The area, now my screen is a little bit hidden. So I will just illustrate what the aquifer is. So underlying the surface of this block diagram, we have an aquifer system. It's a 2-layer system with interconnected hydrogeology. There's a demonstration of regional flows. There's demonstration of localized flows. And if you do the analysis through mathematical model of what happens at the interface between the 2 countries at their arbitrary ground border, not the hydrological border, but the administrative border, then we can analyze where the groundwater flows are taking place. This is the area from which the wells are abstracting. In here, we also have an area which is the wetlands, and the wetlands are fed from both regional groundwater flow, as well as localized flow, and the local river also feeds that wetlands. And what has happened in this period is that a postgraduate study has been completed and has confirmed the conditions and the concept of the hydrology and hydrogeology, confirming that these analyses previously conducted were broadly valid. A new well has been drilled within the territory of Walistan. More wells have been drilled, but this one and 1 or 2 are the only ones from which the data has been made available for this additional study. And that has helped to better calibrate the trends in water levels. The river flow data has been also reconfirmed using some remotely accessed data. And at present, the simulated 2010, there is no signal in the river flows that the records of climate change are visible. And looking at the situation in a map, here we have the 2 countries, the international border, the hilly land, the forested area is forested, it has quite a lot of rainfall. The upper Oxinen River starts up in the mountains, and it passes through this area, which is a potential dam site, and is an optional dam site. This is the capital city of Hillyville, and it's the area where increasing water demands are continuing, and the city needs water fairly quickly. This is the Hilly River, which is primarily within the territory of Hilistan, but as you will hear later on, part of it was part of a disputed territory, and this is the area in which the large amount of agricultural abstractions are taking place. And I'm trying to move forward in my view. So this is the area of the northern gorge hills through which the river passes, and there are potential areas here for dams, but the best one appears to be in the territory of Valistan. The large irrigation area, which is currently abstracting, is here. The lower Oxonian River, into which the upper Oxonian River flows, is passing through the areas of irrigation demand. The planned expansion area, in which either river water or groundwater can be used, or a combination can be used, is shown over there. These are the wetlands, and there's a game reserve. And this is the location of the area of the place where the new well has been drilled, from which the data has been utilized for the additional study. So in the case of Hilistan, in 2005, their needs were for new municipal well fields, because the city was in huge demand of water, was expanding, and there was an option at that time considered for a dam, possible power generation. This is the optional dam site. This is the capital city where the demand is increasing. This is the agricultural area where the informal wells are continuing and they're probably expanding. And in 2010, the 50 million cubic meters of water that was required is becoming more critical. As a result, some private wells are being drilled in the more wealthier areas of the city. The agricultural production region is continuing to produce the food. Well production is continuing. Some more wells are being drilled. And it's subject to intense political pressure not to reduce the abstractions for the essential food supply that the country needs, and possibly for also international trading. The International Financing Agency suggests that there is a need for having the transboundary issues suitably addressed so that they can provide the financing for the investments that are needed. And what is happening in Valistan? Well, in 2005, there was a demand and a need for additional cotton irrigation, and the demand was increasing. The optional sources that were considered them at that time was regulated flows in the river, or a new well field, or conjunctive use of both. This is the large irrigation area. And this is the area for the expansion of the irrigation. The new well that has been drilled around the area of the new expansion of the irrigation area. And if viable, then possibly groundwater would be taken from that area and complemented with surface water. This is the area of the wetland game reserve, which is where quite important reserves are available, possibly tourism as well as the indigenous population. What has happened in the 10 years in between is that we have a continuing demand for this 35 million cubic meters that are needed for the expanded irrigation area. Some diversions have already started, as I mentioned before. Some of them have been carried out by the ministry due to the political pressure, and some private wells have also been drilled. But as I said before, the permit applications in both countries are somewhat lagging behind for the reasons that I've explained. The internal financial interests are getting increasingly important to address the reliability of the water that is needed from the transboundary water resources. A regulating dam on the river would make water resources more reliable, but the best site appears to be in the region of Hilistan. So we will now move on to opening the negotiations. And there will be an opening round, and I will invite the two delegations. So let me very kindly introduce the distinguished delegates from Valistan to commence their opening round of their statements of the way they wish to proceed, and to introduce themselves at the same time. Thank you, and I welcome the negotiating parties. Please go ahead, Valistan.
Okay, I can start. Thank you very much, facilitator, for bringing us together again after 5 years. We think it's very pertinent to now take a stock of where we are in the context of this precarious situation between our neighbor countries. And we're very happy now to then see how we can take the negotiation forward. I can start by saying I'm Karen Wilholt. I'm a principal researcher with IMI, the International Water Management Institute. And in this particular case, I am representing the technical representative from Valistan. You can see that on the background of my screen. I think I will stop here and hand over to my colleague who's more on the legal side, and then we can start with the negotiation afterwards. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to make some points about the recent developments, and those relate mostly to the drilling of wells. That is, in our view, the most pertinent recent development. So as far as we are concerned, there is no reason to revisit the statements that we have made 5 years ago. So we stick to them. We see no need to change our mind or nuance our position. So on the positions that we stated 5 years ago, we still have the same opinion. But I want to say something about these new developments, so the wells. In my view, or in our view rather, there are two types of wells that should be clearly distinguished, and they are both wells that have been drilled in Hilistan, so not our country, but our neighbor's country. So we fully appreciate that Hilistan is facing increasing water shortages, and we then see that more and more private wells are now being drilled in the wealthier districts of the capital of Hilistan. That was just explained to us by Shami, and that the permit application for the drilling of these wells is seriously lagging behind. So that basically means that these rich folks in the capital are basically drilling illegally. They have no right to do it, and they do it anyway. And it means, in our view, that they're basically stealing the water that is not only belonging to Hilistan, but that also belongs to us. It's transboundary water that is being stolen now by the rich people in the richer areas of the capital of Hilistan. So our neighbor might, of course, say that their relevant ministry is lacking in staff and financial resources and other types of resources to properly process and timely process the permit applications and do so in an orderly and timely fashion. But I'm an international lawyer, so I want to remind Hilistan that in international law, that's not really considered an excuse. So this cannot be used as a circumstance precluding wrongfulness or anything in that category. And also under international water law, we're now talking about international water law, this is not considered a factor that should be taken into account in reaching an equitable and reasonable balance. So in short, this is a problem that Hilistan has to solve itself. This lack of resources of the ministry. So in conclusion about this first category of wells, we believe that the illegal drilling of the wells by the rich in the capital of Hilistan is not a reasonable use of the water that Hilistan and Valistan share. And according to customary international water law, both states are entitled to an equitable and reasonable share of the uses or benefits of the watercourse. So if a use is not reasonable, then there's no entitlement to it. And then the second point is about another category of new wells that are being drilled. And those are the wells that are being drilled by local farmers. again in Hillistan. So these local farmers are also drilling new wells, and again, there's a lack of a proper permit regulation. And then we are told that these farmers are threatening with community rebellion if they are not allowed to drill those wells. So they're basically threatening to rebel if no permit is provided to them. This is how we understood the new developments. So the people of Hillistan, they insist that they need these wells to satisfy some basic water needs, especially production of food. So we are very sympathetic to this line of argumentation, and we acknowledge that while no use of a transboundary watercourse has inherent priority over other uses, we do acknowledge that special regard must always be given to the satisfaction of vital human needs. So that means special attention is to be paid to providing sufficient water to sustain human life, including both drinking water and water required to produce food to prevent starvation. However, the existence of an alternative source of water, being a domestic water supply near or adjacent to the international watercourse concerned, that may actually limit the application of this vital human needs argument. And Hillistan does have alternatives to drilling these illegal wells. The farmers do have alternative means to get sufficient water to produce food to prevent the people in Hillistan from starvation. So we believe that they should seek and fully exploit these alternatives rather than continue to drill these illegal wells. So for different reasons, we come to the same conclusion with regard to these two different categories of wells. The wells that are being drilled by the rich for some kind of convenience, maybe to fill their swimming pools, and the wells that are drilled by the farmers to produce food. We believe that the latter have an alternative, and the former, they don't really need this water. I thank you for your kind attention. And so this is just my comment on recent developments, but with regard to all the other issues, the construction of the dam, the Ramsar site that is deserving of special protection, the particular rights of indigenous peoples, and so on, all these issues we addressed in the first round, and we stick to the positions that we held then.
Thank you very much to the distinguished legal counsel. Would the technical counsel wish to add anything at this stage?
Thank you very much, facilitator, for the opportunity to add to what was brought forward on the legal aspects. I would like to add that we are a bit critical related to the data and the studies that have been put forward. We can just claim that we have not been informed about the study, so we are not aware of the updating of information across the two countries. And so we're basically at the same level of understanding because this has not been a formalized process where there has been sharing of information and so on. So this is to us a very critical aspect, and there's definitely a strong need to remediate the situation so that we move towards a more conjunctive way of integrating data across the borders. And this has to be done in a formalized way. It has to be done in a more scientific way. It has to be done with more dedicated focus, with more investments and so on, because what has been done is also very, very limited. It does not really serve the purpose in terms of understanding the larger scheme of the system. Some of the things that we are getting concerned about, and it ties back to our legal advisor as well, his comments about the illegal wells. We actually do not know where the wells are located in the aquifers. And so we don't know the potential impacts. And that is something that is quite critical. Are they impacting the regional or the larger or the more localized systems? And this will be very important for us to understand and to deduct, what are the long-term impacts of these different developments that we just heard about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the distinguished technical advisor. May I seek a word of clarification? The Learned Council used the word stealing of the water. Would the Learned Council wish to remain with that terminology, or do you wish to perhaps restate it? Thank you.
No, why would I want to restate my position?
I just wondered if you wish to use the term stealing the water. Do you wish to remain with that wording?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This brings us to the reply from the Hilistan. So may I open the floor to the Learned Council and the technical advisor of Hilistan to make their opening statements? Please go ahead.
Okay, I will go ahead as the legal representative of Hilistan. I'm like to introduce myself for the participants that were not present in the first round. So I'm Raya Marina Stefan. I'm a water law expert with expertise in international law and transboundary water resources. And here I am the legal advisor of Hilistan. I would like to thank the legal advisor of Valistan for his statement, as if we were not aware of the internal situation in our country. We are fully aware of what is happening and of the illegal wells as all in the city and also in agriculture. 5 years ago, we were already facing illegal wells for agriculture, but the city was under, let's say, water tensions, and afterwards we faced water shortages, so people had to drill illegal wells. I'm not defending the fact that they are illegal. We are aware that they're illegal, but there was a water shortage situation where the people went to search water wherever they are. We are committed to implement our let's say, rules and laws that we have adopted. So far, we have lacked capacities in our ministries. And I mean, this is something we are aware of, and we would like to, let's say, find a solution probably with international assistance. But we would like to also remind of our earlier position that we need to know the full situation of our transboundary water resources on all the sides of the borders, in our side and in your side. And so far, there was a study, but it's only from one side. So we need really to have a completed model. I will leave it to my colleague, Rosario, who is our technical advisor, to discuss on this. Just, I would like also to remind the legal advisor of Valistan and also the technical advisor that from the last 5 years ago till now, you have increased your cotton production and you have diverted a river to this. So you are also using the transboundary water resources, perhaps in a not an equitable and reasonable manner, and this will be determined by the results of the flow. And this might also affect the water that we can take from our side of the border. Thank you, and I leave the floor to my colleague.
Thank you, Raya, and good morning, everyone. I am Rosario Sanchez. I'm an expert in transboundary water, and I work at Texas A&M University. And today I represent Hilistan along with my colleague, Raya. And very proudly represent Hilistan. The reason we are here, if I may say it, is because conditions are getting worse for both countries. So we know our issues. We thank you, the legal counsel of our neighboring country, for reminding us of our issues. I'm not going to remind your issues because you do have issues as well. And you're also pumping water illegally, as it has been reported. And surface water is being diverted without notification to your neighbors, which has happened too. But I'd rather not get into that point because that's not going to take us anywhere today. So if I may propose and recommend to all of you to focus on the way forward. The reason we are here is because we both have problems and we both depend on each other. So if you are concerned about our issues, well, let us help us, right? And issues in the way forward and stop criticizing what we already know what's going on in our countries. So what we have been thinking over these 5 years is a way to agree on something today and start with step one. And if you stand, and if I understand this correctly, Afghanistan agrees on what we agreed last time. We disagree in the way we wanted to do things, but we did agree on main and most important points on how these watersheds should be managed. So if I may remind you, or remind the audience as well, we agree that we should first and above all understand the system, because we are not sure what's going on in the system, especially during these days, now that illegal pumping, illegal diversions are taking place. We don't know how the system is behaving. So we need to know that for sure and utmost for both interests. We need to talk about the modeling of the basin. We need to keep talking about the feasibility study of the basin and the feasibility of the dam construction for the benefit of both countries and of different sectors of the countries as well. We need to talk about monitoring and enforcement. We need to keep talking about water allocation rights or water benefits, both surface and groundwater. We need to talk about conservation incentive strategies for urban and agricultural use from both sides. And of course, we need to talk about water reuse and treatment and how to make this system a sustainable one. So with that, with those points, I want to put that on the table. We've been working on a draft document for everyone, for all of us to work on and move forward. I commend to be proactive instead of delaying this any more time. We know this is urgent for both of us. Whatever goes wrong with us, it goes wrong to you. So there's no point of pointing fingers. And I'll leave that at this point and leave the word to our neighbors.
Thank you very much. Would the Learned Council of Hilistan wish to add any more to the statement by the technical advisor?
No, I completely support my colleague that we need to reiterate our position of last time to join our forces to undertake the required studies to understand the full system and how it behaves, and to undertake a feasibility study of the dam our neighbor is claiming, especially that the dam will also take, the location of the dam is foreseen on our land. So we believe that this is the first step. And we had suggested last time how to proceed through a joint working group of our countries, etc. And like my colleague said, we have a proposal for our neighbors, this time to show our goodwill in cooperating and for the sake of our joint water resources and the people of our countries.
Thank you,
Facilitator.
Thank you very much indeed. May I put to both the parties one point, which is that there has been a study done in between. The study was undertaken by an overseas university. It's not clear who stimulated it in terms of the study, but it's a very complete, detailed PhD investigation utilizing at least 1 or 2 data points which came from Valistan because they're in the public domain. And the conclusions of that study were that overall the system, as known previously, has been reconfirmed by the current modeling and the current reassessment. And so I would just put on the table to both the parties, and maybe they could comment on it, that there is a study. It is a PhD investigation. It has had some nominal support from Valistan in the sense that the data from this well was made available, but it has also been made accessible and available to Hilistan. So I would leave that to you both to consider. At this point, can I ask if either party wishes to make any further comments before we present the results of the first set of the polling? Please go ahead, Learned Council of Valistan.
Yes, thank you. I will be brief. I want to react to the to what our neighbors said about the cotton, because we did not address this issue. And I also want to say something about this research that Shami just mentioned. So let me turn first to our needs in Valistan. That's our territory. There is indeed a growing demand for cotton, and more cotton production obviously requires more water. And we actually consider this a reasonable use of the river. And we have thus begun to divert some of the water from the transboundary river and have authorized the drilling of wells for this purpose, for the production of cotton. So Rosario referred to this drilling as just as illegal as the drilling that is being done in our neighbor's territory, but that's not true, because this drilling is actually fully licensed. We fully support this drilling, and these people have been provided with the necessary permits. So it's not illegal at all. And then about the data. So the data from these new wells that are being drilled for the production of cotton, they have actually helped to better calibrate the trends in water levels and have thus played a useful role in this much needed scientific research and the exchange of data between the two states. So this research was done by an overseas PhD student, but it was done on our territory. He used our wells as a source of information. So we actually fully facilitated this research. And I think we have, in this way, made a very significant contribution to the exchange of data and information that we so much desire. And I don't know, people keep referring to this PhD student as if being a PhD student is something insignificant. But I have also done a PhD, and that's actually quite serious research. So please don't refer to this guy or girl as just a PhD student. I mean, this is the highest level of research that exists in our world, doing a PhD. Thank you.
Would the delegates of Hilistan wish to add anything at this stage?
Can I just quickly say, I know that Raya wants to say something too. Just quickly say, this is important research. We agree, this is important research. It's not all the research that we need. Definitely is the first step. It's one well, and it's on Valistan side. So we need more research on our side as well, and updated research, because we understand this is one well and it's being calibrated based on all data. we need to know how the system works today. So, and how the surface groundwater interactions are affecting the system. And that can only be really designed by a couple of wells, by observation wells, monitoring wells, and of course, more people involved. The more science we get, the more robust the results. So, of course, this is important new research that we all needed, but it's not enough. We need more than that.
Thank you. Legal counsel, yes.
Just I would like to specify to my legal counterpart that my technical colleague did not say that your cotton wells are illegal, but the overall abstraction might not be justified considering the water resources you have. So maybe what the additional water that you are abstracting for cotton is perhaps stealing from the water that is meant to us, because you know that cotton is one of the crops that need the most water. So perhaps you can also change crop to adapt to the water situation of the transboundary water resource. Just to clarify that we understand that you have legalized your wells, but does not mean that it is justified to have cotton crops in view of the water situation of the transboundary water resource. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. May I, unless the legal counsel of Afghanistan wants to add, I was going to suggest we present the results of the polling before we move to the second round. May we do that? Yes. Hassan, please, would you present the results of the two polls?
Yes. So the first question about what's your opinion about such a transboundary water resources studies? And the majority, as we see, they say they can give some guidance, but each country must conduct its own official study. So this is regarding the first question. And second questions was mainly on what standard do you think the negotiations should take, and also 77%, the majority of this respondent tell that provide details of the new abstraction or river diversions to the other party. So these are the results of the two questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. The interesting results from the polling. Our audience is very law-abiding, and they say that the PhD PhD study gives some guidance, but each country must conduct its own official study. And the second one, which is to do with providing transparent data, the audience has chosen that the parties should provide details of the new abstractions and river diversions. And interestingly, very few people said avoid providing such information in case it prejudices their mutual negotiations. Very interesting indeed. I will take the liberty, ladies and gentlemen, now of just making a quick commentary before I open the floor to the next round of negotiations. And my commentary would be this to both the parties. Ladies and gentlemen, learned counsel, learned advisors, you have an emergency cropping up in your country. Water needs are really increasing. People are drilling illegal wells. I would not say to fill their swimming pools. I would say that in this relatively medium to low level HDI country, it's actually water needs. The municipality is not able to supply water to all parts of the city, and therefore out of need, the wells are being drilled. You might call them illegal. I think the notes suggested that they may have made applications. I'm not quite sure, but that the applications have not been processed for the obvious reasons. And in the case of Afghanistan as well, the private sector interests are putting a lot of pressure on the ministries to move on trying to get some agreement. So that's the kind of background that I would put to you before you proceed to your second round. And I'm assuming that you are fully authorized, I understand that you're fully authorized by your governments to take whichever official stand that you're taking in the negotiations. So may I therefore open again the second round of negotiations on where we move next. What is it that you would like to do next? And I will invite, I think the Technical Council of Balistan wishes to open the floor, so please go ahead.
Thank you, facilitator, and thank you for the feedback so far. I think we are in a bit of a crunch here in terms of moving forward, and there's a bit of a stronghold for both sides, and I think we need to have a breakthrough at the moment in order to move the negotiation constructively forward. May I propose from my side, and also on the back of the developments that I have been actually witnessing over the last 5 years from my side, and that is that there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of international attention to international waters, not only from the research side, not only from legal aspects, but also from civil society and political aspects and so on, recognizing that water issues are becoming very, very critical, and they can lead to political instability if we don't address them. I'm not saying at all that we are at this point in our case here, but I think we do need to acknowledge that these views are out there, and we have a case in point to actually take advantage and capitalize on some of these discussions that are out there. And I think the most pertinent issue for me is that there are actually funds out there that we can reach out to. And I think that can be a way forward, so that we can build the necessary information and knowledge base that I think we all agree is necessary. I at least think that we need more information. We need to share that much more broadly than what has happened so far. It's been a very muddled process. There's been no clear sort of agreements around how to share data, how to share the PhD report and so on. And so we need to formalize that, and we need to take it into a process that is now internationally recognized in terms of what they call a transboundary diagnostic analysis, which is a formalized process between countries. It's not a legal process, it is a technical process, but it is agreed between the countries. And then that then leads to a strategic action plan. It's a very formalized process in many international contexts these days to go that route. And in the strategic action plan, you decide what are the priorities for solutions, for investments, and so on. And here we're talking about the dams, we're talking about circular economy in terms of reuse of wastewater, we're talking about managed aquifer recharge schemes and so on, which are alternatives to a dam. And I think we really need to look at what are alternative solutions to a dam, because a dam loses a lot of water. It's going to be sitting there between the countries and causing some tensions. Can we not think of how we can bring some of that additional water that we can hold back between, behind a dam, get that underground, maybe even after getting the energy out of it? If there's a hydropower potential, we can exhaust that first and then get the water underground and then tap it afterwards. So I think there's some opportunities that are not explored yet, and this is where we need to go. And we can put our case forward in the international community, and we can probably attract both attention and also funds to take this forward if we actually come forward as a party of two countries that are actually interested in doing this and agreeing to do it. So I think that's the kind of agreement that we need to come to today to take this forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. Open the floor to the Legal Council of Balistan.
Yeah, I have very little to add to what the technical expert just said. I just want to add one thing that I think we should not overlook, and that is climate change. So I think if we are looking at the future, we should situate our problem in this context of climate change, and that may make us aware of the urgency of the problem. So we will be facing increasing droughts and floods. More extreme weather events are guaranteed to take place. So that's something we need to take into consideration. But it might also offer us some opportunity, because the whole world is now faced with the same problem. So everybody is thinking of solutions that could be beneficial to us. And also there will be funds made available that may be useful to us. So we have to situate our problems, our transboundary problems, in the context of this larger global challenge, and that is the challenge of climate change.
Thank you very much indeed. I understand that there is a wish to move forward from the legal and the technical side towards conducting some further studies, TDAs, and then developing a strategic action plan. May I open the floor for colleagues from Hilistan to respond to those ideas and suggestions? Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, facilitator. I am very happy to hear the positive words and to see the positive attitude of the technical expert from Balistan. And yes, we have to think of the way forward. And so to show our goodwill with my colleague Rosario, we have prepared a draft joint declaration to sign by our both country. I repeat, it's a draft that, of course, it is suggestion, but it is, I would say, it joins what the technical expert has already said. Perhaps the facilitator can show us some extracts from the joint declaration that we had prepared. It contains more details, but at least you have the basis, and we are open to discuss.
Thank you.
If Rosario, you wish to add something, please go ahead.
No, just I share the legal expert and the technical expert concerns. So I think that if we agree on that, we can move forward. And if you can share what we have prepared, facilitator, then we can start moving forward and go over what we have prepared as a draft. It's a proposal for our neighbors to revise, and let's see what we can get out of this.
May I ask the legal and technical counsel of Balistan if you would wish to see this draft agreement at this stage, or would you have something of your own?
It's not a draft agreement, it's a joint statement. It's not the same thing.
I beg your pardon. Thank you for correcting me.
Well, we were not aware that they were working on this statement, so obviously we cannot say anything meaningful about it now. We need to go back and study it. But yeah, sure, you can email it to me, and then I will read it and come back to you in a couple of months or so. No problem.
It is meant to start the discussions and negotiations. It is not carved in stone.
I know, but we cannot spontaneously respond to what you.
No, of course, but you can have a look and already say whatever you have to say.
No, that's not how this game is played. Sorry, we need to consult back home with the home base.
May I clarify? There is a draft document of which the distinguished delegates of Hilistan are willing to put forward the bullet points for your consideration. Are you saying that you would rather not see them in the course of this negotiation, but would receive them more officially through your parliament before you could consider them?
Well, it would be very unprofessional of me to just have a look at it now and then come up with an immediate response of what I personally think of this draft. That's just not how these negotiations are done.
Well, we don't expect to have a position. We just want to share what we think we could move, how we can move forward. I mean, we're not signing anything today. We're not agreeing in anything today. Of course, we all have to think about this. But we really like, you know, to show what we are working. I mean, this is how you show some ideas to move forward. If you don't want to see it, or you think this is irresponsible, I
already said that. Please email it to us. So we are very interested in your proposal. Please email it to us.
Thank you.
Well, it was meant to be a document to discuss between ourselves, and perhaps afterwards we come out with something. We can go back, each one to his government, to discuss it with the government. That is what it was just a basis to help us move forward. This is what was meant. That's all, nothing more. But it's up to you. If you prefer, we email it to you, no problem. It can be emailed to you, and then you think about it. And when you are ready, we are always here to discuss with you.
As the facilitator who would like to see some progress in the second round of the meetings, because if I may say so, you've set your positions out. Basically, you're saying that you need more data before you can move forward, and that you must make your mutual legal obligations within your country more stringent. In other words, do the permitting, licensing, etc. But in advance of that, I detect that you do not wish to have a discussion even on the bullet of what your next steps would be, because 5 years, 5 years have passed. Conditions are getting a bit more critical. At the end of this round of negotiations, I was wondering if you would wish to take back to your governments what it is that the mutual positions are, apart from the need for more data. May I put it to both parties to respond to that? Perhaps Hilistan first. Would you like?
I can just quickly, yeah.
Would you like to point out what your main items in your possible document were?
Do you want me to do it, partner Raya? Quickly? It's not a big document, really.
Yes, go ahead, Rosario, and I have a point to add, but I think after you finish.
Okay. Yes, this is a way to. This document. It's just a way to present what it's just a written way to present our positions. So we thought the writing it will be even clearer for you and actually for the audience that is listening. Otherwise, we would just leave the table with our same thoughts as 5 years ago. So, but we can still try to do it. So we are proposing a joint statement that we can agree on today, which basically says what we have been saying more formally. We recognize the importance of our shared waters, of our well-being of the population. We declare our goodwill, which we have done that already. Then the intention to initiate the full cooperation between ourselves for the joint management of the water resources. In view of reaching this cooperation, we agree and we propose. We propose, and hopefully that we all agree, the establishment of a permanent working commission between our countries that will integrate current and previous data on the physical conditions of the system, which we already mentioned that. This commission can design the current modeling efforts, keep working on the modeling that we need, develop the feasibility study that we've spoken about on the dam or reservoir, and and they evaluate the assistance of international organizations. We both know that the international organizations that will give us funding for whatever we agree on will necessarily need an agreement and from both of us. Not an agreement, not an official agreement, but at least a joint statement. The results of the study or the modeling should have at least how to conjunct the use of surface and groundwater, safe yields on both sides of the border, the monitoring and enforcement part of the system, the water allocation rights, both surface and groundwater, conservation incentives, strategies for both urban and agricultural use, water treatment, and of course, resilience capacity of the water resources systems, given the uncertainty of the actual environmental conditions, and which means basically climate change. This declaration, this statement will guarantee, as I've said, the funding resources by IFI and other international organizations, and it will provide the information that we need to make further decisions and to move forward with the next step. And once this technical information is being delivered to both of us and agreed by both of us, the representatives will meet again, design the adequate legal framework that will govern the transboundary basins based on the data and how to manage that towards the future, based on the principles of international water law and the guidance of draft articles of the law of transboundary aquifers. In parallel, and in the meantime, because this needs time, right? We commit to undertake our best efforts to implement in our respective territories policy and legislation for the sound use of water in consultation with the concerned stakeholders. And of course, we also commit to consider the ratification of the UN Water Course Convention and the UNECE Water Convention. That's basically on a shorter version what we have drafted today. And with that, I'm going to give my counselor and my partner Raya the opportunity to add.
Yes, thank you, Rosario. Just last word from me. We didn't speak at all today until now about the legal occupation of our land, which is a pending issue between our countries, and especially that it affects the access to water resources, because we cannot access anymore part of the river which is under this land. And we will seek to let's say solve also this issue while solving all our water resources issues that are mentioned in this joint statement that we prepared. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I understand that the distinguished delegates of Hilistan have prepared a statement and they've read out the main points that they wish to put to you. If I may summarize, they propose setting up a permanent working commission. They propose conducting technical studies. They propose that using this document as a form of agreement, that they would seek to release funds from the International Financing Organization. And then following the completion and acceptance of the studies that will be conducted through funds from the financing agencies, they would then come to further meetings in order to further agree on the way ahead. But in the meantime, they wish to ensure that the territorial issues are still on the table, and they commit to implementing their own respective legislation and regulations, and they also commit to considering the ratification of at least one or two, if not both, international legal instruments, the 1997 Convention, as well as the UNECE. May I ask the distinguished delegates Afghanistan to react?
Yeah, I can come in and I can hand over to our legal counterpart here. So from the technical perspective, I think this resonates with the proposal from our side in terms of developing a TDA, which would be a transboundary diagnostic analysis, which would build on existing information, but would definitely expand on the information available, because I think we all agree that is critically important. I think I will leave up to the legal counterpart to come in here, but from my perspective, I think we have to be very careful here in committing anything beyond the TDA and the approach to the international financing institutions, because this is on a very weak basis and there's no legal sort of binding measures that we can put in place for this kind of joint statement. So I would recommend to keep it to the technical level at this point in time, and see this as a testing ground for how the collaboration goes forward. Of course, we can all strive to improve our regulations on each side. I think each country has that individual interest already, so that's not something we need to necessarily commit to. But I think the first part would actually be to secure the funding that would enable us to take that very critical first step in terms of enhancing the information that is required, and then leaving out as much of the political issues at this point in time, because we also know from international experience that working on information base and so on builds that necessary trust that is so important for taking further political decisions. And I don't think that we are at this point in time based on what we have discussed today. So I'll be very careful in going that route at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Legal counsel?
Yes, I agree. To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that our opponent or our neighbors rather, they only introduced this draft that they obviously prepared before the start of this meeting, that they only introduce it now. I mean, why didn't they share it with us before the meeting so that we could have a look at it and then discuss it at this meeting we're having now? So now we are a bit confronted with this rather detailed statement, and we have not been provided with an opportunity to read it in advance. To be honest, I find that really unprofessional. And I agree with my co-counsel that it would be equally unprofessional of us to now react to this statement that has been cooked up in advance by our neighbors. So please email it to us. It's great that you've done your homework. We very much appreciate that. So please email the statement and then we can study it and we'll get back to you when we have made our decision.
As a point of clarification from Valistan, may I ask if your parliament or your government ministries ask you or not ask you to prepare some kind of a draft agreement before you were sent to these negotiations?
Well, we didn't prepare anything.
Thank you very much. I understand that your government has sent you, but without any briefing as to what it is they expect you to come back with.
No, we are very aware of the position of our government, but we did not prepare a statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've got about 5 minutes before we finish the webinar. I found it fascinating and very interesting, extremely interesting. It shows me where we are on transboundary water negotiations worldwide. I think I think the two webinars that we did, two simulations we did, are very, very illustrative. And they will be extremely good learning material for people once we move forward. I think these are the only two webinars on training that we had committed ourselves to. At this point, neither Middle East Water Forum nor the think tank that I direct have any plans to have any further webinars of this kind, simulations. But we look forward to hearing from the audience, and if they would like to have some, and if the IEH Transboundary Commission would like us, and if the UNESCO IHP would like us to develop some more webinars of this kind, we will do. Before we conclude, and I'm not going to make any further commentaries, I'd like to invite Dr. Hassan to present the results of the last two questions, and then make his own comments. And then I think in 5 minutes we're closing. And I think before that, maybe, before you close, Hassan, maybe each of the very, very distinguished, learned, very interesting colleagues, 4 of them, would also give us their views on what is it that you found from this exercise of simulated negotiation. Over to you, Hassan.
Thanks so much, Shami, and all also the panelists and both countries. I think it's a very interesting. That really shows, you know, the real case in many transboundary negotiations. So regarding the questions, the third question was mainly about how should the science be presented to policymakers so that cooperation is really effective. And as you can see, there is also a range of respondents says that starting 39% that says a series of arguments that help to resist and or agree the meaning of reasonable and equitable, causing no appreciable harm and the duty to cooperate. The second choice was mainly as a mathematical model that simulates monthly flows and all that about the river. So, and then we have geographical evaluation of the inter-country relations as a function of transboundary water resources. So this like a range of answers that could be also help to advance the interface between policy and science. The last question, the last question was about, from your knowledge of this vast amount of literature concerning transboundary waters, how has this improved the science policy interface in the past 10 years? So as you can see, there are two like nearly percentage, 38%. Much of the literature is rather locked in silos, scientific literature in too complex for policymakers. Legal literature is too also inaccessible to the technical community, socio-economic literature, and much of the literature is theory-based, and even though it may relate to real cases, their political application remains too complex or costly for policymakers. But actually, from the chat, there are also many suggestions, Shami, on having a third party to have to facilitate the discussion and also to do the studies and to recommend to both countries the way forward for them to cooperate. From my side, I thank everyone for the participants and everyone who is really joining us in this webinar, and leave the final words for you, Shami. Thank you.
Raya, would you like to comment very briefly on the whole two exercises? What was you, just in just a minute?
Yes, I would like to say that today I think we have made some progress nevertheless, our view is not so far from the view of the technical expert from Balistan, and the legal counsel of Balistan is not insisting anymore on drafting an agreement without without developing the knowledge about the water resources. So there is some progress on this, and we were a bit disappointed because we had prepared this draft joint statement with the goodwill to make more progress today, but we hope that we can reach, let's say, an agreement, a joint understanding in sooner than 5 years. Thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Karen?
Thank you, facilitator.
You now speak.
We're back in the, yeah, okay. So, yeah, I've just jotted down a few points from my perspective here and the learnings that I've sort of gathered from our two negotiation sessions. I think it's been quite illustrative. It's also been a learning experience for myself. And I think it has probably been for all of us, because it's not something that we normally do, but I think we actually managed to come forward with something that is quite realistic in terms of what you could expect when you sit around the table. So what we have seen is that, you know, it can be quite protracted in terms of getting anywhere. It can take a long time to just agree on what you are trying to agree on. There can be some interference from political historical issues that can actually muddle the process quite a lot and be counterproductive in terms of moving forward. There might also be some learning from, you know, maybe there's a bit of a need for more rules about the game, you know, like, so what is expected when people come to the table in terms of bringing like pre-cooked up, you know, statements. I think that was, in a way it was good, but I think it was not well received because of the way that it was done. So that was more of a procedural thing. So that's something that maybe should be more clear as these things develop. Thanks.
Yes, totally. I agree with Raya and Karen so far. I mean, this is a learning experience. It never stops. And I'm sure if we meet again, we're gonna see a totally new world again, and new things comes in and new conditions, and, you know, surprising and spontaneous, but we need to be ready, especially these days, right? And the urgency, because this is real. The urgency is real. We're not making this up. So we can find that in any place. So, but it's a learning experience and I've enjoyed it. And happy to see that we agree on something. Probably we didn't write it out, we didn't sign on it, but we did agree on what Karen finally said, a TDA, which I like that name, a technical, what is it? Technical transboundary assessment, something like that, which is what we've been proposing since the last 10 years. Focus on the system first, and then we can agree on what to do with the system. So
last but not least,
thank you.
Otto, what did you think of the learning from the two exercises?
Yeah, I really enjoyed taking part in this whole exercise, and I sort of took it upon me to play the bad guy. And then Karen was the good guy. Huh? She was more willing to negotiate and so on. And I just kept very strongly stating our position. So we sort of played the good cop, bad cop strategy. And I think it worked out quite well. So yeah, I had a lot of fun taking part in this exercise.
Yes, I thought your very strong interventions were very provocative and very interesting. So and I suspect that the real world may have a similar kind of. Hassan, do we have a minute to get Alfonso's and Alicia's comments if they're there?
Yes, for sure. 1 minute. Yeah, we can go.
Alfonso, are you there? Would you like?
Yeah. May I?
Yes.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. This is extremely interesting and very rich. Thank you for doing. I congratulate the stars of this discussion. They really convinced me. The faces, and then they really look like a real serious situation. So I have 3 observations to make very quickly. First of all, even though this is a game-based simulation, it clearly shows that the intricacies and difficulties in agreement to cooperate. Second observation, overall, I think that I knew this already before. I've been working on it for years. I think science alone, just isolated science, can no longer resolve transboundary issues. And this clearly came out. And my third observation before I conclude is that clearly we need, and when I say we, I'm including myself in the Transboundary Aquifer Commissions, we need to move forward integrating science with social and particularly political issues. So all in all, I believe that, let's forget the silos and move on and try to do science in something more practical, more applicable. So congratulations once again to you, Shami, and the rest of the participants.
Thank you. Alicia, are you there? No.
I think she is not there. Yeah.
All right. Well, all I can say is thank you very much indeed for your time. I know that it took up quite a lot of time. I know that everybody is extremely busy, and I'd just like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank Hassan and the backup team in the background, Ronnie and his colleagues, for keeping the technical stuff going. Raya, thank you very much indeed for your time. I think it was very interesting. Karen and Rosario for the good conversations. And of course, Otto for his time, even though he's way far in the eastern part of the world, and our colleagues, Alfonso and Alicia. Thank you very much indeed. I look forward to seeing you again in another place. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Adios. Adios. Bye-bye.